This is Curious Brain Thoughts.
Well,
Paul, here we are again.
and apologies to the listeners. We've, still been dealing with some bugs and stuff like that. So we've actually, I think we missed one or maybe two. I can't remember.
Yeah, we did miss some.
Yes.
Do you know, I heard on the news this morning that flu and seasonal bugs in the UK, and these are the people who go to the doctor or the hospital with it. So there'll be lots more people who don't go to the doctor or hospital. But their reported instances are up 246% from last year.
Not much then.
Hashtag everyone's ill.
No, we're all fine.
Paul coughs on cue. Well done, Paul.
Thanks very much.
Paul's still not very well. I'm feeling much better. My energy's returning. Oh my goodness. I'm on the way out. So that's great.
Well, no, up.
Not in
out,
that way. Out of the flu.
Yes. As opposed to she's near the end of her life. No.
That sounded different to how I intended. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, good.
Can I just say, for everyone who watches Gavin and Stacey, oh my goodness.
No spoilers.
I'm not going to spoil it.
Gavin and Stacey is a UK sitcom based in, actually between Wales and Essex. And
Barry Island.
It's a very well written show by two comedians. Actually, a lot of people might know the one of the writers who is also one of the main characters, because he presented the Saturday Night Live, wasn't it? Or the Late Show.
I think so. Late Show.
James Corden.
Yeah, James Corden.
So
and he did that bit carpool karaoke, which
yes.
was hilarious. And so he wrote Gavin and Stacey with his friend Ruth Jones, who's a British actress and writer, and they're
off of
both
Wales.
Incredible. Yeah, she's off of Wales. So it is a reflection of ordinary life, and it's done so beautifully. And they did their last ever episode, which rounded off all the loose ends and most of them. And it was just sometimes those episodes can be poorly done, but this wasn't. It was absolutely great.
Brilliant.
And there's a little documentary that they did afterwards, and James Corden was talking about one of their writing techniques, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. If you think there's a triangle of, it could be the characters in the scene and the audience, at all times, one person needs to be out of the loop. So it could be that all the characters know something, but the audience doesn't yet know it.
Right.
Or it could be that the audience and one set of characters know, and there's another character who doesn't yet. And that's what creates tension and pace. And I thought, God, that's so clever. really liked
good.
That.
Really good.
Yeah, really good.
I was just going to say, would you mind moving your mic closer? Because you're quite distant.
I'm doing it. Here we go.
Put
Is
it
that
in front
better?
of you. Yeah, that might much better.
Good. There we are. You can hear me now, dear listeners, in all my glorious,
Yes. Which is great. So we're very appreciative of that, because you're less like you're in a distant land.
In a distant land.
And now we get your singing up close and personal.
Good, you're welcome. Do you know what? The other day, Rachel, our sister, and her husband, they dropped our nephew off at my house because we were going to visit our other long story. Bottom line is, they were at my house in the drive borrowing my little thing that pumps your tyres up. Mm-hmm. And my neighbour came along who had been out for a walk, and we were talking, and Felix, my son, got a really superb speaker for Christmas. So I just took the opportunity to check in with him if he'd heard any of the 90s hip hibbity hoppity.
Easy for you to say.
Very good, England.
gangster.
If he'd heard any of the 90s hip hop and drum and bass that we've been blasting out of the speaker, and he hadn't, but he did then say to me, however, we have heard you singing. And I was like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
And you're
But
so
actually, Paul, Peter said I had a very nice voice, so...
Love that. And dear listeners, if you're wondering what all the clattering around is,
Sorry.
Lou seems to be doing some spring cleaning whilst we're recording.
Now, what I've also forgotten I'm just so rubbish at podcasting because I've also forgotten that noise suppression is off. So every little thing I do, you can hear.
Yes, that's correct.
Sorry, everyone, about that.
That's how much focus she's giving us, guys. You know, she's...
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, you're welcome to get this much, if we're honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a surprise, actually. In fact, it's a late Christmas present, so I'm delighted.
Happy New Year.
And all that jazz. And now... excuse me. I'll try and keep that to a minimum as best I can.
It's all right. You do you.
So
I've got an idea for a subject, if you don't mind.
Well, what I was going to
Unless
do...
we've got some missives that we need to look at.
What I was going to do was probably engage the random team Jenna Hater, because it's the first time this year we've had some freezing temperatures, and it's probably important that we start her up. So
go for it.
Let's go.
Random theme generator. Random theme generator.
Well, there is some noise suppression because you couldn't hear the dot matrix printer printing out an email that we've had. And it goes a little like this. Hello, farters. Now, I'm not sure if they're German. Hello, farters. That would imply there were two fathers.
That's not the same at all.
No. I think they're actually referring to flatulence.
Good.
Long-time listener, first-time caller here. Oh,
hello.
Very exciting.
Bonjour, ça va?
Firstly,
French, you might not understand that.
Firstly, oh my gosh, brackets, my Paul impression, love the podcast. You both keep me grounded on my drives to and from work and leave me giggling when I should be focused on important tasks.
Boom.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Happy
Basically,
to be of service.
Not a mic drop, because obviously we've already assessed that the mics are expensive. So, my idea, excuse me, my idea is rest. I feel that taking rest is sometimes a difficult thing for some of us to do. Okay, maybe just me. I wonder, how do you both take time to rest? Or do you also struggle giving yourself the time? Keep farting on. Love, Lucy.
Lovely Lucy.
Lovely, lovely Lucy.
Resting. Oh, that's such a good subject, actually.
It is.
What a Donny Lucy is. Resting. Now, Paul's looking it up off of the online dictionary space.
I am. And I was going to
thusly, it means as follows.
Yes. So I'm going with Cambridge. And it means to cause someone or something to stop doing a particular activity or stop being active for a period of time in order to relax and get back your strength.
Well, that does very much sound like me in December, basically prostrate on the sofa or in my bed. Off of flu. Twice. Boom.
Boom.
Let's have it.
So that's kind of enforced.
But what I noticed was that, to Lucy's point, I would not enable much rest for myself otherwise. Do you know what I mean? Now, if I think about downtime when you're not cooking, cleaning, parenting, working, because I do also work in the evening sometimes when probably I shouldn't. What is my rest other than when I'm ill and can't do that? I think I do watch TV, so I sit down and just kind of engage or not with the whatever program I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
My son and I were watching All Quiet on the Western Front last night.
Oh my gosh! Did you watch it in German?
We watched it dubbed in English, actually.
Watching it in German is an experience.
Yeah, I've watched it before in German
okay.
with Felix because he's dyslexic. I decided to do the dubbed English, which was easier for him to access. Anyway,
dubstep.
That wasn't necessarily a rest. It was an emotional journey.
Yeah.
It was really, it's a tough watch. So I would choose a different program if I wanted to really,
I'm curious, what is your attitude to rest and resting?
I think that's the key to it all, perhaps, to be honest. And I think that my attitude is you should be doing things.
Yeah.
At the weekend, I make a list of, I call it my weekend pottering.
Right.
But it's actually a list of things that need to get done.
What sort of things?
Well, sometimes it's, I don't know. I live in an old stone house, and at the moment, you need to scrub some of the window recesses and the walls to combat black mold because it's not well insulated property and it gets lots of condensation. So that's one of the things that's on my weekend pottering. I don't think that's a job, but that's a job that needs to be done, and I will do it.
The walls are about 1 meter thick, and
They are thick.
Single pane, I think. Is that right? Single. They're not double glazed, or some are double.
They are
glazed?
double glazed, but they're metal framed. A lot of the
Right.
windows, so it attracts a lot of moisture.
Yes. And I think
The point being, my attitude is I won't not do that. I'll prioritise doing that job. And I often I notice that I fill my time. Especially when my son isn't here at the weekends. I fill my time with things. So sitting down and reading a book, which for me would be an act of rest.
yes.
Or doing a yoga nidra, which for me would be an act of rest. Or I think it's also your attitude to rest and what you mean by rest.
Yeah, so I was thinking about the difference between rest and relaxation, because, for example, as I might have mentioned before, I do love playing music, live music. Got a number of music projects on the go, which are really great fun, and that can be really relaxing. However, as a drummer and percussionist and a sound engineer, it's busy. So I wouldn't say I'm resting, because by nature of the definition, I'm not stopping. I'm doing lots. And so that, I can get some enjoyment. That can be relaxing. Sometimes it's hectic. And so rest for me has connotations not just in my body, in my spirit, and how still and calm my inner world is.
Yeah.
And when I think about it in that context, I do find rest quite difficult. So prayer and meditation, those are useful things. However, it's not a straight line. Nothing is a straight line.
No.
So it's not like prayer equals rest, inner rest. No, not necessarily, because there could be lots of anguish behind the prayer or struggle or whatever might be going on. And so it's looking at the definition, the ability to stop something or someone, to stop them from doing something, not being active. You called me Pabs because, well, that's also like an abbreviation of a Spanish version of my name, and my nickname is Pabs the Tabs because I've got so many tabs open in my head all the time. So how rested is that?
Yes, imagine a browser, dear listeners, if you will, with about, I would say, 50 tabs open at any given time. If he's running on a high intensity, you could double that. He's got so many things going. It's such a busy mind with lots of different things. And sometimes, Paul, you can yeet from one tab to the other, and if you don't signal the move to others, they're like, what?
Exactly.
Sorry, now we're talking about chilies. We were talking about PowerPoint 2 minutes ago,
Yeah.
but you've opened another tab or just accessed another tab. So I think that rate is difficult to quiet that, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
The quiet mind.
Yeah. So also, similarly to you, I've got a strong work ethic.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because principally there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you butt it up against what's your attitude to rest. That's when you go, oh, hold on a minute. No, it's not necessarily toxic productivity. It's giving myself permission to actually just stop. And I did do a lot of that, particularly with work over the Christmas period. Because I've been posting on my socials every week since like middle of Feb last year.
Yeah.
And I did nothing for 2 weeks. And I didn't want to. I just wanted a rest from it.
Great.
And that has felt really good, actually.
I think that, and that's really amazing, how good a rest can feel, and it can rejuvenate you to pick it back up again, or to say, actually, I want to change that and I want to do something different. I think if I'm being really honest, sometimes for me, rest can also, when it meets, so the productivity can be a distraction from things, from an inner suffering or struggle or whatever.
Yes.
But also, I think there's part of me that equates rest with weakness, with vulnerability. That's not all of me. That's not my full view of it, but that's a part of me that thinks that. And so, am I avoiding something? Am I procrastinating? But actually, by filling my time with things, I'm equally avoiding.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm avoiding the inner life by filling my outer life with things.
And it makes me think of the expression, a change is as good as a rest. And particularly, that example you were talking about, if there's some anguish or struggle or something internally, and doing something else to distract you for a minute, like, for example, it's difficult to think of too many other things, though it does happen, whilst using all four limbs, playing the drums and doing the sound at the same time. That's quite full on. You've already got a lot to think about. So you don't tend to think about too much else, which is a rest from all the other things.
Yes.
When I used to do a lot of cycling, I'd find actually I wouldn't be thinking too much about many things. I'd be thinking about my form on the bike or whatever, and keeping the cadence going and so forth. So it just makes me think, actually, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, is to get back on the bike, because, well, for health benefits and also, well, physical and mental. And, so that's another thing I'm just going to log as a positive kind of, actually, it's a way of getting a change, which is as good as a rest sometimes.
But what we've opened up is a space where, because the old definition off of Cambridge was talking about a physical rest,
Yes.
And we've introduced the concept of a mental rest,
Mm-hmm.
putting down or pausing all of the other tabs in your
Mm-hmm.
brain whilst you just focus on drumming. Or
Yes.
I got this Christmas present, which is this paint by numbers kit, and it's a Liberty print, which is a very beautiful thing. You get all of the paints, and it's really detailed, and you really have to focus. And that for me is, I find often, when I'm, for example, when I'm reading a book, if my mind is wandering, then you have to really focus on the
Yes.
book that you're reading. So there are certain things that put you right in the now, in the here and the now, whatever they are. Swimming is the same. Being in really cold water is the same. So you've got to focus on taking your next inward breath and calming your heart down.
That is not my idea of fun.
No, and actually, before I get in, it's not my idea of fun either.
Oh my gosh, the fact you do it though is like just banging, because I just can't imagine getting into some freezing cold. It's just not fun for me.
I don't do it very often, and there is a sauna as well, I should disclose. So it's near me. I go with my friend who's a hardcore cold water swimmer. She's brilliant. She dips in the River Frome, which is a tributary of the River Frome, runs through Stroud, where I live. And she dips in the river all the way through the winter. So she's hardcore. And I go with her, and it's our little treat, and off we go. And it's in the middle of nowhere in rural Gloucestershire, and it's this beautiful little lake, and you swim round, and it's only 200 metres or something. You just do a lap or two, and then you get out and you go and sit in the sauna for 15-20 minutes, and then you get back in. So it's actually, so it's a perspective. But my point about the rest is, when you get in, and that's why I like it, Paul, it puts me right in to my body, right in this moment, and there's nothing else that can go in. There's nothing else that's possible. And that, when I experienced it, I realised how rare that is, actually. And how intentional you have to be to create those experiences for yourself.
And I guess with the absence of like a deeper rest, it makes me think about scrolling.
Right.
Or drinking, or lots of other things that we do, watching TV, whatever. There's lots of other things that we do that, not to cast any judgment about any of those things.
No, I do all of those things.
Exactly. It's just interesting to notice that that's something that maybe we do as like micro rests, because it's distracting enough, and also often, like particularly like with scrolling and stuff, is quite addictive.
Yes.
So that's a bit more of a funny one, I guess. I'm just trying to think about, and maybe you can answer this first. When was the last time you experienced total rest, whatever that means to you? Total rest.
What, other than being really sick and physically being unable to move?
Yeah, that doesn't really count. Like when you chose it for yourself.
Oh my goodness. The last time I experienced total rest because I chose it for myself.
Yes.
I can only identify like small moments, like I chose to sit down and read my book, or I chose to do yoga nidra, which I could do every day but don't. So I noticed that my answer to that question is those are small experiences, and I don't do them very often. Sometimes I pay to go on a retreat where I create that space. The boundaries of that space are held by somebody else, not me.
Yeah.
And then I enter the space and can access rest. But that's more like a yoga retreat. I say yoga. You turn up, you do a little bit, you have a chat, you might do some mindful drawing, and then you lay down and have a gong bath for about 45 minutes. It's not, you're not doing 50 million sun salutations or anything. It's not like that.
Right.
So it's much more, it's very gentle, very, do you know what I mean? So I do sometimes do that. But discretionary rest that I choose, that I don't pay someone else to hold the edges of, it's not enough, is my honest answer. It's not enough.
Yeah, if I think back, I actually am struggling to think of a time where I have experienced total rest that I've chosen for myself.
Ever.
And I'm thinking both, for any significant period of time, I'm immediately discounting sitting down for a minute and having a breathe.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking, for me, I'm thinking total rest means to me that there is a prolonged period of time where I am just, The only thing I can think of, which was in the relative, it was only, when was it? September, what are we now, 23. I went on a pilgrimage for a week, or however long it was, 6 days or something. And there I experienced lots of spiritual rest, which was very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And being a pilgrimage, it's not physical rest.
No.
You're moving and you're doing stuff and whatever. Yeah. And yet I can still almost sort of taste that spiritual rest. So I can't really think of a time where I have chosen total rest for a prolonged period. Prolonged for me means more than a few hours, more than a day, I would say, for me.
I would struggle. I mean, you think about holidays, but that's a lot of activity. I like, in recent years I've been doing camping. That's not restful on any level.
You come back more tired than when you left.
Yes, although it's great fun. It's not resting.
Yeah.
I'm also struggling to think of a day plus.
So it's interesting. It is really interesting. So, just sort of tuning into that, it sounds like for us there are lots of things that can be getting in our way. Some of those might be our beliefs about things. Some of those might be our biases. Some of those might be our family circumstances. There's lots of things, legitimate things that could be getting in our way. And I'm curious, is there anything, what can we think of for ourselves, bearing in mind we can't even think of a time when we've had total rest? What would we each offer to someone who asked us how to go about having total rest? What might we say?
I would say that total rest, physical, mental, spiritual, is, unless you're a Buddhist monk and I think it's very difficult to achieve total rest, is what I would say. So what I would say to somebody is, what kind of rest do you want? What's your intention? Are you physically exhausted in which case you need physical rest, etc. So just to get an intention around the kind of rest you want and how long you think you need. And often I think when we're very physically tired, we need more rest than we think. So maybe if the person says, I need 2 days rest, my gut response would be double it. So if you say you need 2, you need 4. You know, like when you go to the doctor and they go, how many units of alcohol do you drink? You go, oh, 2. And they go, right, let's
Make that 12.
at least double that, fella. Because she don't drink 2 units a week. A day, more like.
Yeah. In between meetings.
Paul, don't give away all my secrets. That's how I rest.
Yeah. Shit-faced.
Yeah. It's not.
I agree. I agree. And I think I would respond in a very similar way. The other thing I would say is taking the pressure off of the idea of, because it's kind of loaded. So taking the idea off of, I must have rest out the back of this. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's like when you arrange to go out on a night out and you go, oh, this is going to be the best night ever. It's going to be brilliant. And then it's flat.
Yeah.
And you're really disappointed and you've put loads of energy in and effort into making it a great night. And actually, the impromptu sessions where you phone up and go, all right, Lou, fancy going for a beer? And then we have an absolute screaming, laughing fit for the evening. Brilliant.
Yes.
I would say it's a similar thing with rest. You know, approach it with neutral expectations. Don't try and focus on it being total, oh my gosh, it's going to be incredible. Just, okay, I'm just literally just going to focus on the here and now, moment by moment.
Yeah. So how, Paul, given that you can't think of a time when you've had more than a day of rest in your life, how can you build more rest in?
I think I've actually been doing that over the last, I would say, maybe over the last sort of 4 years.
How have you done that?
By one of the things that I have found very, very helpful, that I've been doing for a long time to squeeze more things in, was time boxing. So I use my diary, like if it's not in my diary, it just doesn't happen, because otherwise I'm holding all these things in my head. And so I actually put in, not just breaks, like when I need to walk the dog, I will put the dog walk in my diary. 1, it won't happen. 2, it creates a space. Because then I can see when something else comes in and goes, oh, there needs to be a meeting happening during dog walking time. I then have to make a judgment call to go, okay, so where else can I fit it in? So I actually deliberately build in almost like rest stops throughout my day.
Nice. And how do you use those rest stops?
I use them in a number of different ways. So
To have a drink.
yes.
Of tea.
Yes, of course. Maybe the occasional whiskey. Not so much during the day, unless it's over the Christmas holidays. And then day
I was at
drinking.
Paul's house, actually, quick anecdote, and he poured himself a glass of Christmas milk.
Yes.
Which is Bailey's, for those of you who don't know, which is whiskey with cream, basically, and it's absolutely girlish.
It's delicious.
And Paul poured himself a glass of Christmas milk, and the amount of space left at the top of the glass was very, very small.
As it should be. I don't have an issue with the top of the glass, therefore
Whole full tumbler of Bailey's.
I'm glad to approach the top of it. So, mindful that we have been wittering for some duration, that we have no idea for how long.
You're telling me to shut up, Paul?
What I'm saying is, maybe
Have a rest.
we could give people a rest from listening to our ramblings.
VG.
And, yeah, very grateful to Lucy, wherever you are.
Yes, Lucy. Thank you. That kept us going for a while, so it's obviously a very interesting topic.
It is indeed.
And if you have a topic you'd like us to explore, you can email us, curiousbrainfarts@gmail.com.
Amazing. Well,
I'm off for a lie down.
Yes, me too. And actually, if you could see my dog, listeners, he's already resting. He's actually very good at resting.
Dogs are, aren't they? They're
Resting
ninjas
right
at resting.
Legend. Right.
Amazing.
See you next time.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye.
Curious Brain Thoughts.